I think throughout the CanChamp, we've only conceded only one goal in each game max. In the CPL sometimes it's been others, but like I think we've done a good job defensively in this competition, and we've proved ourselves as well offensively that we can go and get that goal. So honestly, being the underdog in this situation, I love it. I don't, I don't like it doesn't affect me really. Like I actually rather be the underdog and have everybody underestimate and prove everybody wrong because that's a little bit of our identity over here at the dark side. I mean, they're all the way in the light, whatever. Everybody knows the Vancouver Whitecaps, but I can tell you for sure next week they'll know VFC.
Tierno Ba opens the CPL Newsroom presented by Volkswagen for us this week because, fellas, that's where we're starting this week because we have to, for the first time ever in a year with a full Canadian Championship tournament, there's a Canadian Premier League team in the final. Vancouver FC, Vancouver Whitecaps FC on Wednesday night at BC Place, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock local. Boys, we have to preview this final. AGR along with Mitchell Tierney. You guys have both been watching this full tournament. We've been paying a lot of attention to these two teams this year. Mitch, we'll come to you first just to give us the broad scope of what this means and how exciting it is, and just maybe what you're most excited for in this final on Wednesday night.
Oh, man. I mean, obviously a historic occasion. The first time a Canadian Premier League team has, worked its way through the rounds all the way to the final. Obviously, we had Forge FC reach the final in the 2020 final, played in 2022. They went to penalties, lost to Toronto FC. That's the closest a CPL team has ever come to lifting the Voyageurs Cup. But, this run is unique, obviously, for so many reasons. The league form of Vancouver FC and, how opposed this has been to that in terms of, their ability to get through rounds while at the same time, struggling to really play with that same level in the Canadian Premier League season as well. The dramatic way they've done this, getting through on penalties against Pacific Cavalry, beating an Atletico Ottawa team that looks like such a juggernaut, and really, I think with maybe the exception of the first round, being the underdogs really in every round against the Cavalry team, they still have never beaten over 90 minutes, but managed to get by on penalties against an Atletico Ottawa team that were heavily favored. And now they run into by far their biggest challenge yet, which is, of course, the Vancouver Whitecaps, 3 times champions, or 4 times overall, but 3 times three-peat champions, going for 4th in a row, which has only been accomplished once, and that was by a Toronto FC team in a 3 to 4 team tournament. Like, that's the other side of this coin, is like the Whitecaps are looking to make history, and I think there's a strong argument to make that they'd be the best team in this competition's history ever if they can go 4 in a row because of the way they've done it versus, what Toronto FC did back in the day against, maybe a 3 to 4 team tournament. It's a little bit different. So there's a lot on the line here. Obviously, history of being the first CPL team to win it, history of doing that 4-peat, and that just makes this an incredibly compelling final.
Absolutely. AGR, you're our man on the ground in Vancouver. You'll be at the game on Wednesday. Maybe I'll get you to set the table for us first with the Whitecaps. Obviously, a team that we've seen, a reasonable amount of on OneSoccer this year with their run to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final and their run through this tournament. They got to the final in emphatic fashion. They beat Forge 4-0 in the second leg of the semifinal. What's your sense of kind of how the Whitecaps are approaching this week, and just for maybe those who are real CPL fans that don't pay a lot of attention to outside of their league, what are the biggest weapons for the Whitecaps?
Yeah, I think for the Whitecaps, like, this means a lot to them. That's kind of a big thing. Like, this is another trophy. It was actually a really funny story. I went to Whitecaps training last week, and I was just asking some guys about this tournament and their history in it. And one quote that really stood out was like, people don't win a lot of trophies sometimes in the pro game. So sometimes, especially like this tournament, you can almost take it for granted when you're in the Whitecaps position because they've been expected to win it now a few years in a row. But then one of the players told me a story where it's like Damir Krylak joined the team last year, and he was a legend of MLS, from Croatia, very respected veteran, like respected in the league. and he won the Canadian Championship, and it meant the world to him because he never won a trophy professionally. Like, it was his first trophy, and there's been instances of that on this team. So I think it's really interesting that the Whitecaps within their group, there's this hunger and realization of, it's another final. They're fourth in a row in this tournament. They have a chance to win 4 in a row, but it means more than that, there's also parallels between them winning their first in 22, snapping a 7-year trophy drought, to now reaching a CONCACAF final this year, to now being in the MLS Supporters Shield race, to now being an MLS Cup contender. Winning kind of creates this atmosphere. It creates this vibe. So that's the big thing. This Whitecaps team has a winning vibe. And to answer your question about what makes them dangerous, just under Jesper Sorensen this year, this team controls games, and it's remarkable because it's home or away. Doesn't matter which 11 players he has, because there's just been an availability crisis all year since June, it feels like. And this past weekend, he played Ralph Priso at center back away to Seattle. And historically, away to Seattle has not been very kind to them. I think last year they won for the first time in a long time there. And they got a draw with Ralph Priso at center back, and they should have won. Really, they could have won. That's the kind of team they are, where every game they play, they play a style on the ball that controls games, that puts teams under pressure. They're tough to play when they have a lead, but they're not the same Whitecaps where we can sit back, they can break you down. They're just a well-rounded, well-oiled machine that starts with their coach, and they have a balanced roster, not a lot of egos, which really stands out. And I think that's why they're successful, because when a guy goes down, there's legitimately this next man up vibe about the team.
Yeah, there's a really impressive consistency, I think, about the Whitecaps. That said, there is some insane star power on this team. Obviously some Canadian national team familiars like Ali Ahmed, Jaden Nelson, top MLS kind of quality players, Brian White, so on. There's also a guy called Thomas Muller, who we have spoken about extensively, has won, I don't know what the number is, but I think it's dozens of trophies in Germany.
35, I think. He's
35, yeah. So that would make it 3 dozen, an even 3 dozen trophies in his career.
German most decorated player, and that's pretty over Tony Kroos.
Yeah, exactly. And this guy has won the World Cup. He's won the Champions League. He's won pretty much everything. You know what he hasn't won, though? The Canadian Championship. And that's what Thomas Muller is going for on Wednesday. That would truly be, I think personally, the cherry on top of a career that's really missing that final piece. Mitch, though, standing in his way, it's a local derby. Vancouver FC, the unlikely, I think we'd all agree, CPL finalists, bottom of the table in the CPL, but in the final. Mitch, we've been watching this run all the way through. What do Vancouver have to do here to give themselves a chance? And how large a chance are they able to make?
They've got to be perfect. I mean, there's no two ways about it. They have to play a perfect game, and that's on both sides of the ball. I mean, defensively, you look at what they did against Atletico Ottawa, and they were outstanding for, 89 of 90 minutes, but that one goal they give away, if that's the final, they lose it, right? And they've had kind of that tendency over the past couple of games to give away those kind of late goals late in halves. You look at that one, even against Halifax this weekend, where they're up 3-0, they give away a goal at the last kick of the game. You can't switch off like that against the Whitecaps. And even if you are almost perfect defensively, they have those players that can still carve you open. So they've got to take away that space between the lines. They got to be great in transition, because we know what the Whitecaps can do when they get moving with the ball. They can also tear you apart, and they have to really take their chances. We saw in that second leg for Forge against the Whitecaps, they get that chance 2 minutes in and they miss it. And there's your chance. That was your chance for the game, basically. That they didn't really get another one, and the Whitecaps went on from there and dominated. If they get this chance in this game, you absolutely have to take it. The one benefit they do have, they're incredibly battle tested in penalties. If they can somehow claw their way to a penalty shootout, that's where I think that maybe the tables turn a little bit. And we know the talent certainly on the Whitecaps side, but there's something to be said for having been in those shootouts, and they've done incredibly well. You look at some of the penalties they've taken over the past few rounds, they've been near perfect. Callum Irving's with some great saves in the penalty shootout as well. So again, it's got to be as close to perfection and as close to switched on for 90 minutes as possible to beat a Whitecaps team. And even then, you're looking at an absolute uphill battle in this game.
Yeah, I mean, they've also got Hugo Mbong now, who's finishing at maybe a more consistent level than almost anybody else in the Canadian Premier League at the moment. You do always have to be careful of a team playing with absolutely nothing to lose. And, if we're being honest, Vancouver FC have been playing with nothing to lose for maybe months now, right? And we've seen it in the Canadian Championship, and we've seen it even the last couple of weeks in the CPL. They've won 2 in a row now after not winning at all at home until 2 weeks ago. They've won 2 in a row at home. This is clearly a team that is having a little bit more fun playing football. Martin Nash has really gotten them to buy in on this idea of kind of playing for each other, playing for themselves in the CPL. And I think that has served them well and taken some of the pressure off their shoulders. And I think they again, they're going to go into this Whitecaps game just knowing that, everybody expects them to get demolished, right? And they're just going to go out there and do what they can. And if they can, keep it close and maybe sneak a moment or two, then, that's fantastic for the club. Mitchell, you spoke to a couple other guys from Vancouver FC and from the group in the lead up to this game, and we want to hear from them and bring them in after Tierno Boss set the stage for us. But I believe Matteo Campagna had some interesting stuff to say about just how special this run has been for them in the cup.
I think Calgary, we kind of realized, we were like, wow, like, there's only how many games left, and we could really do it. Like, when we shifted our minds to what we can actually achieve. And I think the mental part and mental toughness that we've kind of established as a group in the CanChamp has been really good. And so I think it's the type of mentality you need in tournaments like that, cup tourneys. Like, it's super important. And that's, you can never tell what can happen in a tournament like that. And I think we've really done well in that circumstances. And yeah, I think against Calgary, we kind of realized, we're like, even after the celebrations and stuff like that, we're like, wow, like this is that feeling we want, and to really go for it. So,
I mean, yeah, that's all you can do is really go for it. We'll finish here on this CanChamp final preview with Callum Irving, who's been the captain of Vancouver FC for all 3 years of the club's existence. I believe he's played all but one game in the club's history, which is remarkable. And I don't think that this opportunity means much more to anybody than it does to him. So let's hear what the Vancouver captain had to say about playing in a Canadian Championship final with Vancouver FC.
It's felt like a long 2 and maybe 3/4 years almost now, almost 3 years that I've been here, along with a few other people that have kind of been here from the beginning. And I think we all had hopes and aspirations for the first year to kind of springboard us into the playoffs and kind of start hot. But I think the first 2 years have been really challenging, and so now 3 years down the road to kind of get to this point where we're in a final, we're making history as a CPL club by doing that. I think it's just huge for everybody that's put a lot of time and effort into trying to make this thing successful. Because it's not always easy when you're not getting the wins, you're not getting the success. As much as you realize as you get older that it's not really about that. It's more about the everyday grind that you put in and who you're putting it in with. It's still nice to get those little victories and those little moments where you can reflect on the journey, and that's kind of what this is now. And I'm just super proud to be a part of it.
Canadian Championship final, Wednesday, October 1st, kicking off at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, live on OneSoccer and TSN between the Whitecaps and Vancouver FC. Don't miss it.